Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Derrick Pitts. I'm the Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute Science Museum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Today, December 21st, is a really important day in astronomy. Two reasons, really. The first reason why it's important is, of course, it's the winter solstice. This, of course, would be the shortest day of the year, or the day that has the fewest number of hours of daylight. And so we always see this as being the first day of winter. But also today, we happen to have a planetary conjunction happening today. It's happening between the two largest planets of the solar system, Jupiter and Saturn, and that's what we're going to talk about mostly in this video. So hang with us while people jump on board, and we're going to talk about today's planetary conjunction. Again, I'm Derrick Pitts, Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute Science Museum in Philadelphia. This information is good for anybody watching anywhere across the country or anybody who wants to get out to see the planetary conjunction this evening. As long as your sky is clear, you have good clear weather, you'll be able to see this tonight. But guess what? If the sky isn't clear where you are, you still have a chance to see it tomorrow. So hang on, we'll bring you the information. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Derrick Pitts, Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. We're going to talk about tonight's planetary conjunction between the two largest planets of our solar system, Jupiter and Saturn. It also happens to be occurring on December 21st, which is the winter solstice, first day of winter, shortest day of the year, fewest number of hours of daylight. But don't let that fool you. These two are not connected in any way. It's just a coincidence that they happen to be taking place. Okay, well, let's get started with some of this information about the planetary conjunction that's happening today. Today's planetary conjunction is occurring between the two largest planets of our solar system, Jupiter and Saturn. Now, these two planets have been visible in the evening sky over the last number of months. They've been quite widely separated, though, so one was on one side of the sky, the other one was on the other side of the sky. Very, very wide separation between the two. But as the months have been progressing since September, the two have appeared to be coming together in the sky closer and closer and closer until they come to their culmination point, which is today, December 21st. It's on this day that these two planets seem to be completely aligned with each other, such that you can't see one behind the other. In actuality, there is a little bit of space between them, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Well, for you to see this, it really doesn't take very much at all. All you really need is a good, clear view of the southwest horizon. Now that's important. You need the southwest horizon, not just the southwest direction, but the southwest horizon. And the reason why is because this event takes place very close to the horizon, within 15 degrees of the horizon. That's not very high up at all. So if you have any trees in your way or any buildings in your way that are obscuring your view, you're not going to be able to see this. So you need to get to some place where you have a clear view down to within 15 degrees of the horizon. Now, you might be asking, wait, how do I measure 15 degrees of the horizon? Well, it's really very simple. Your fist at arm's length, I'm not going to be able to quite extend it, but your fist held at arm's length like that. As you look across the top of your fist, if you set the bottom of your fist at where the horizon is right at eye level, well, your fist width is 10 degrees right there. So another half fist is another 5 degrees. So you have 15 degrees right there without any difficulty. That's really easy to measure. Okay, so now, when are you going to be doing this evening? Well, this is another really critical point. You have to be out just after sunset, which is around 4:40 this evening, and 7 p.m. Now, the sky's not going to be dark at 4:40, but by 5 o'clock it's going to start to get pretty dark, and then 5:15, much darker, dark enough for you to begin to see these planets now. Now, the reason why I say you have to do it between 5:15 and 7 p.m. is because the planets will have set below the southwestern horizon by 7, and you won't be able to see this anymore in the evening. So it's that critical period of time after sunset, just after the sky gets dark, but not much later than that. You only have about an hour or so to catch this over on the western horizon, southwestern horizon. Again, just 15 degrees above the horizon, okay? All right, so we've got the time, we have the direction, we know how high. What do you need for astronomical observing equipment? Guess what? Nothing. You don't need any equipment for this at all. Just your own personal telescopes. Admittedly, they're one-power telescopes, but they work just fine. You don't need binoculars for this. You don't need a telescope. If you do have binoculars, get them out. That will enhance your view. They don't have to be special binoculars. If you have a telescope that you know how to use, you can get that out and use that too. If you do have a telescope but you haven't been using it and you're not really familiar with it, you need to brush up on your skills, don't bother with that tonight. You're going to take up all your time setting up the telescope rather than actually observing the event. So I want you to see it directly with your own eyes. Okay, so now let's get into the mechanics of what we're actually talking about. Planetary conjunction, two planets coming together, seeming to occupy the same spot in the sky, right? Jupiter and Saturn, the two largest planets of our solar system, they actually come close to each other about once every 20 years or so. But they haven't been this close together, 1/10 of a degree apart. They haven't been that close together for over 800 years. They're not going to be that close together again until March 2080. Think about that. March 2080. If you're very young, 5 years old, 10 years old, you could see this tonight, and then you could see it again in March 2080. But if you're older than that, things are starting to look kind of slim about whether or not you'll be around to catch it in March 2080. Hopefully you will be. Hopefully you will be. But, for some of us, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You only get to see it tonight or tomorrow night. So let's make sure your skies are clear wherever you're observing. Now, the other piece of this is about the orbital motion of the planets Jupiter and Saturn. Well, they don't move very fast at all. In fact, it takes Jupiter 12 years to orbit the Sun. It takes Saturn 29 years to orbit the Sun. So they're not moving very fast. So why has this conjunction been able to happen so quickly over this time period from, say, September until now? It's us. It's our motion around the Sun, the Earth's motion, the platform from which we're observing. Our orbital velocity around the Sun is much higher than that of Jupiter and Saturn. And what this means is that we're running up faster than they are around the Sun. So the reason why we can actually see this event looking this way as a conjunction is because the Earth has come up from behind, if you will, come up alongside of Jupiter and Saturn. We've come across in such a way to make them seem as if they've lined up. And then we're heading off around the Sun ahead of them. Now you can do the very simple demonstration at home to show how this works. You can use your two fingers like this, right? And you can hold them out in front of you. And you can use your own head as the Earth platform to simulate the motion. So what I'm doing right now is where these two planets were in the sky, back in September or so. Now, to me, they don't look like they're lined up at all. It looks like there's a separation between them, just about like this. I'll see if I can keep it on the screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my head across the two like this, such that they line up for me, and I see the two of them together like this. Now, as I try to simulate this on the screen for you, I have to set it up like this. But as I move my head back and forth, my fingers seem to have a separation between them, and the farther away I am, the bigger that separation is between the two as I see them from here. Now, the other important piece of this is that, take a look at my fingers. As I hold them like this, they still look like one is, wait, let me get my fingers together here. There we go. It looks like they're very close to each other, one right on top of the other. But as I rotate like this, guess what? They're not close at all. And that's actually what's happening in the sky. So as you look into the sky this evening or tomorrow, remember we're standing on a platform that's moving. And as our platform moves by the two planets, we see this parallax shift, if you will, between the two that allows them to look as if they're lined up and then separated again. Here's the big catch. This week, the Earth is about 540 million miles away from Jupiter. The distance between Earth and Jupiter is about 540 million miles. That's incredible. That's a huge amount of distance. Now, how about between Jupiter and Saturn? Yeah, that's a piece we have to add on to this because the distance between Jupiter and Saturn is another 403 million miles. So you could actually place that distance between Jupiter and Saturn. You can drop that right in between the Earth and Jupiter because there's so much distance between us. So if you think about it this way, what this now means is that you have a three-dimensional sort of idea of this structure of the solar system because we're standing on Earth, looking out into space. 540 million miles further that way is Jupiter, and then another 400 million miles after that is Saturn. So, it's actually the celestial mechanics of the solar system, the Earth's motion around the sun, that makes it seem as if we have this wonderful conjunction of planets happening in the sky. Okay, so how long is this going to last? Well, the Earth continues in its motion, so we have tonight, we have tomorrow in which we can see this, and then the next few nights after that, if your sky is clear, you'll begin to see how the planets are now separating again. So, unfortunately, that'll be it for another 20 years or so. Well, in the case of this close, it'll be another 60 years before we get to March 2080. Now, between now and then, there will be close approaches of the two planets, but nowhere near as close as this, okay? That's why this is such a unique event that you really want to try to see. Okay, so now, what else do we need to go with this to help us understand what's happening with this? Well, very simple and straightforward. Clear sky, southwest horizon. You don't need binoculars or a telescope. You just need that clear view, and you need a clear sky. Unfortunately, around the Philadelphia area, the Delaware Valley here, we're clouded out tonight, but we're keeping our fingers crossed for tomorrow. Now, the last piece to add on to this is, why is this being referred to as the Christmas star? Well, part of the reason is because this conjunction is happening very close to the Christmas holiday, December 21st, December 24th, and 25th coming up later this week. So that's a nice idea, put the two together like that, something neat and cool to see in the evening sky. Sort of like a celestial holiday gift for us as we look into the evening sky. But the other reason why it has this reference is because about 2,020 years ago, it turns out that there were several major conjunctions of planets right around the same time. So 2,020 years ago, about the time of Christ's birth. Well, those conjunctions would not have been recognized as planets in motion matching up with each other in the sky. They would have been seen as a very special star because the astronomers of that day, who were then astrologers, we knew three of them. We should say that the scriptures tell us that three of them, known as the three wise men or the Magi, saw a very, very bright star in the sky that announced to them a very auspicious event. Well, that star that they saw probably was one of these conjunctions of three planets that happened at the time. Now, since they didn't know anything about planets and moving planets, what they knew of were bright stars that could move around the sky and match up with each other. They thought that that would create something that had to be a mark of a very significant event. And so here we have another reference, or the further reference, to the Christmas star. Now, we know of that Christmas star at that time as being the thing that brought the wise men to the east to Bethlehem in search of baby Jesus. Well, biblical scholars and astronomers have been able to put these two events together in a way that makes sense according to what we know of could have been happening in the sky at that time. So, any way you cut it, whether it's astronomical or whether it's biblical, it was recognized as a special event, a special occasion. And this evening and tomorrow evening, there's a simulation of that with just two planets as opposed to three. So when you put all this together, we can see that we have a special event that hopefully some of us will get to see this evening, and if not, hopefully tomorrow evening. Okay, well, we've gone over this enough. I think you get the gist of how this works. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to answer them for you. You can throw me a question right now in the comments if you wish. And if we're done with this broadcast, by the time we're done and I haven't gotten to your question, I'll be sure to check back in and see if I can answer your question for you. Okay? So what else is happening out there that is of any interest astronomically speaking? Well, right now there's a crescent moon in the evening sky. I saw it last night through some thin clouds, and that's going to be growing towards first quarter toward the end of the week, and we can continue to watch that as it goes. These bright planets are going to be available in the evening sky for another few weeks easily, but they'll be setting earlier and earlier as we see them. Jupiter and Saturn I'm speaking of. But here's the other thing that you can keep an eye out for. Remember we talked a little bit earlier about being right here now at the winter solstice, the first day of winter? Well, guess what? Sunset times are coming later and later already. Since December 7th, we've been seeing later, almost December 7th, let me just see, since December 12th, we've been seeing sunsets come later and later and later. So while the sunsets are coming later, we get a few minutes extra time in the evening. Sunrises are still coming later. So we're going to have later sunrises right into early January. But here's the interesting catch about the winter solstice and the sunrises and sunset times. We're still losing time on the day because we're having sunrises come later in the morning, even though the sunsets are coming a little later in the evening. We're on our way to another really important astronomical point in the year, and that point is called perihelion. Perihelion is when the Earth reaches its closest point to the sun. Yep, this time of year, the sun reaches its closest point to the sun. And that date for us this year, I believe, is on January 2nd. We'll be at our minimum distance to the sun. Of course, you're asking now, if we're at our minimum distance to the sun, why is it that it's so cold here? Well, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it all has to do with the tilt of the rotational axis of the Earth. Our rotational axis is not vertical, but tilted 23.5 degrees. Because of that tilt, sunlight coming onto the northern portion of the Earth is spread over a wider area because the top is not directly pointed toward the sun, but tilted away. If you're in the southern hemisphere, the light rays are much more direct, so the intensity of the radiation is a little higher, and it's warmer there at this time of year. So that's the reason why. But we come to perihelion on January 2nd of this year when we'll be at the closest point to Earth, to the sun. After that, we start building up minutes of daylight on both the morning side and on the evening side. Sunrises will start to come earlier, sunsets will continue to come later, and here's how I look at it, folks. We're well on our way to spring already. Even though it still feels a little cool in the air, and perhaps we have some snow coming, it's just a few weeks until we get to spring. Okay, well, folks, we've gone over this and talked a little bit about winter solstice. We also talked about perihelion, Earth's close approach to the sun, but mostly we talked about the planetary conjunction that's happening this evening. I hope you have good skies so you can get out and see it, and take somebody else out with you to observe it as well. Since it's only something that happens every once and so often, you should make sure that everybody you know gets a chance to see something like this. Remember, no binoculars, no telescope, just looking with your eye. That should be easy enough for you to see. These are bright objects. You can tell them without any difficulty at all. They're brighter than anything else around the sky. And Jupiter will be the big one, by the way. If I didn't mention that, Jupiter will be the big one. And Saturn is lurking just behind it and a little bit up to the, just above Jupiter a little bit. You won't be able to tell that separation unless you use binoculars or a telescope. They'll look like just one object tonight and tomorrow night. After that, they'll start to separate again, but they'll still be fun to track because you'll know which ones they are. Remember, Jupiter as the big one and the brighter one, easy for you to spot. Okay, thanks a lot for joining me, folks. My name is Derrick Pitts, Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute Science Museum. If you have any questions about this event tonight or anything related to astronomy, feel free to reach out to me. You can hit me up on Twitter, @CoolAstronomer is my handle, and you can reach me through the Franklin Institute at fi.edu. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again sometime in the future. Have a great holiday, everybody, and stay safe out there, please. And we'll see you again in the near future for some more great tips for viewing the evening sky. So long.